How are you? What time is it in India?
It's 11:35 p.m.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so nice to connect with you, Sai.
It's nice to meet you, and thank you very much for giving me opportunity to be on my show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I have been wanting to uh, talk on a platform in India. And the opportunity is, I'm very excited to do this with you.
So before going into the topic, can you put your camera a little bit backward so that you can fit completely?
Like that?
Yeah, this is great.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay.
So again, thank you very much for coming to my show. I thought to tell about you and the work that you're doing to my audience, and also I understood that you want to say something to my audience and to the world through my medium.
Yeah. So let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Monica Krishnan. I am a clinical pharmacist. I've been practicing for 20 years. I currently live in Los Angeles with my family. I'm a huge mental health and grief advocate. My nationality is I have Gujarati background, so I am Indian. I have been wanting to talk about mental health and bring it to a platform in India because it's such an important topic that I think is affecting people globally. So my mission with the work that I do is to just empower, educate, and normalize the conversation about mental health. Because if you really think about it, everyone at some point in their life will struggle with mental health or grief. And truthfully, the pandemic has showed us that globally, right? Like everyone globally in 2020 was dealing with some form of mental health stress.
So mental health stigma and mental health in India as well as globally.
Yes. Yeah. So I currently do a lot of work in the US, which is where, I live. I'm born and raised in the US, but my culture, true to my heart, I am Indian. So wanting to take the passion of mental health and combining my culture and really just opening it up to that platform and normalizing that it's okay to talk about mental health.
So tell me about grief in India.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Tell me about grief and mental health in India.
So I think that there's a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health and grief. Um, a lot of it has to do culture, education. A lot of the times, there's that lack of education of what is mental health. Is that person just depressed? Is that person dealing with anxiety? But there's a root cause. This is where the science comes in. What's actually happening in the brain? What kind of chemical imbalance is happening? Has the person gone through like a major traumatic loss in their life? Are they grieving? What's causing them to be sad and and afraid to ask for help? And this is where the stigma comes in. You know, being a clinical pharmacist, I treat patients from heart to diabetes to you name it, asthma. But when it comes to mental health, there's that shame factor. People are ashamed, but people are not ashamed of having diabetes or asthma or, a thyroid problem. There's no shame there. But there's always a shame when it comes to mental health and mental health meds. And this is where my role comes into play as a clinical pharmacist and also someone who has gone through her own journey of mental health and grief. I can use that to empower my patients. And that's literally what I want to do with this platform in India, is to reach out to the Indian audience and say, do not let your culture prevent you from getting the help that you need. Let's normalize it. Let's talk about it. And let's just move forward and end the stigma.
So, you born and brought from Eastern world. Now you are living in Western world. So I'm sure you understood very well about Eastern and Western culture. So how this is
Yes.
affecting mental health?
So when I talk to my patients, I definitely bring in the Eastern philosophy, right? Like I practice meditation, I practice mindfulness, all the Ayurvedic treatments that are out there. But there's also a place for medications, like medications for depression, for anxiety, therapy. There are a lot of people who are ashamed to go to therapy, to see a therapist, because they feel like, there's nothing wrong with me. And when I talk about grief is something within mental health that I really focus on. And my passion with this came about when I personally lost my husband to cancer 11 years ago. I was now the patient. I was dealing with depression, being of Indian culture, when you lose a husband, there's this like cultural aspect of how women are treated. When I was growing up, we had my grandma, we called her Ba. Ba was her name for grandma. And she lost her husband when she was very young. So she would wear white sari. That's it. White sari, no makeup, no jewelry. She kind of lost her self-identity. And even though I am born and raised and live in America, I also faced some of that stigma from my fellow Indian society about losing my husband. Not to the extent that my grandmother did, but it was just like, you know, just put in a category, labelized that I am I'm no longer with my husband, but I'm still struggling with my depression, my mental health, and my grief. And I started doing my work as an advocate in 2019 when I first filmed my very first public speaking engagement, where I was like, I'm going to put this shame aside and I'm going to use this pain and turn it into power.
So tell me how culture will affect the mental health.
So I think, and I'm just speaking from what I've seen with the Indian culture, personally, um, people just kind of brush off mental health. Oh, she'll get over it. She'll stop crying. Give her a couple years, right? We don't treat other health conditions that way. Oh, give her a couple years, the diabetes will go away. Oh, give her a couple years, her asthma lung function will improve. But when it comes to mental health, there is this like shadow or black like cloud saying it's not real. It's just in that person's head. It's she'll get over it. And a lot of it is culture. And I've seen this also in our Indian culture, but when I've spoken to other people, this is happening in a lot of Asian cultures, not just our Indian culture, but a lot of Asian cultures. And this stigma still applies to here in the US. Like we still see it in America, but not as much as we see it in Asian populations. And I think the biggest culprit is the lack of education. Educating people on what mental health is. What is mental health?
So, what actually makes people here in this on this land hide themselves or not to come out or stop expressing themselves what they feel?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
So, what exactly those qualities or those things in human who are living on this land, India, which is creating negative energy and which is not allowing them to express themselves or not allowing them to put their emotions out and be the reason for this stigma.
Well, I think I have to ask you this question. Um, are there resources in India for therapy? Do people go to therapy in India? Because people go to therapy all the time in the US. Like every single person goes to a therapist. What do people in India do? Do they go to therapy?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so my question to you, do people in India go to therapy? Do you hear about people seeing a therapist? Do they take antidepressants? Like, how do people deal with mental health in India?
Actually, I came to know about taking mental health very seriously by seeing Western people, and not many people even take psychologists or uh, uh, the people who solve the problems which are related to mental health. Uh, I around me, I don't see they are wanting to have a support like you. But I'm sure from this video, from your words, they will definitely understand and they will actually know the value and importance of mental health.
Yeah, I think for me is there is an entire toolbox when it comes to mental health. Therapy, medication, exercising, mindfulness, meditation, mood boosting foods. There's a lot of things you can do for mental health. And just taking medications and therapy is just one aspect of it. But the most important thing is asking for help. Ask for help from family, from friends, from a healthcare professional, a teacher. I mean, you name it. Listen to a video that talks and educates about mental health. Um, Suicide is a huge thing when it comes to mental health. And I think it was about 2 years ago, there was an Indian young woman. It was right when the pandemic began. She was dealing with postpartum depression. She had just had a baby. She was dealing with, she didn't understand mental health, and they just brushed it off saying, oh, she'll feel better soon. She committed suicide. She didn't have the support from her family. And I have to tell you that I am so lucky that I had the support from my mom and my dad. Even though they were brought up, raised in India, in Baroda, Gujarat, they still, being here in America, had to kind of really understand what mental health is and supported me when I went through therapy, supported me when I needed to take an antidepressant, and supported me when I started doing all this public speaking about mental health, because it just takes one video to save someone's life, you know?
So, 20 years you're into Western world. Before that, you are into India. So, how you transformed yourself? How much time? for you to change from Eastern philosophy to Western philosophy?
I have grown up here in the US. I've been born and raised here, but I have had a very strong. Hello? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. I've grown up at a very strong Hindu foundation. So, I mean, growing up, I've learned, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. I mean, I have that background, of my culture. I have the background of the practice of meditation, but it's not until like probably the last 5 years when I started bringing my Eastern culture, my Eastern practices back into my life. Like I do meditation. Meditation comes from India. I practice meditation twice a day. It is one of the biggest things that helps me bring my mind to mindfulness, um, especially in this pandemic. And I love, and I tell that to my patients that it's okay to infuse Eastern and Western and bring it together. And you have to just find what works for you, because what works for me may not work for you.
So human beings are same everywhere on this planet, but why this difference and why there are imbalances and differences of thinking in different parts of the world when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. And I think my answer would be I want to study the different cultures, find out, and I'm starting with learning about my culture first. I want to find out what's going on in India. Like, what are the resources available? What is this? What are the suicide rates? Are there is there a strong family support? So I think a lot of it has to do with resources, how important mental health is in that particular country. Um, and and I think that's the core. I mean, coming from America, mental health is huge here, especially the last 2 years. We have a free phone number. It's like 911, which is our emergency number, but there's a mental health number. You call this 3-digit number and you get a free therapist on the phone. It's free if you have any type of mental health crisis. So there are so many resources. People go to therapy. There's medications available. There's all these holistic approaches. But I think to answer your question, Sai, I think every culture handles it. Every country handles it. And a lot of it has to do with the culture and the resources available.
So human beings are there on this planet from thousands of years. So what they have practiced, because you belong to two different countries. So how, I'm sure, like you said, Ramayana, Mahabharata, the history, the Indian history, uh, from there human beings was there. So how was their mental health and how they used to handle problems or look at problems?
Well, talking about Ramayana, didn't Sita go underneath the ground when she found out that Ram betrayed her? She was like, I don't want to live anymore. So she went, asked Dirty Ma to bring her underground. So, I mean, mental health goes all the way back to Ram and Sita, right? Like, I mean, think about it. Like, she was so unhappy on earth because her husband made her do Agni Pariksha and sent her back to Vanvas or whatever. And she felt so betrayed as a wife and a mother. She didn't want to live on earth anymore. She wanted to go back to Dhartima, where she originally came from. And that's what she did. So if you think about it, mental health goes all the way back to Ram and Sita days. So I don't know how people have handled it. People just, I mean, that's one thing that I thought about when I was watching. I was like, oh my God, she's just not happy. And that's just an example of how far back you see mental health. But no one breaks it down that way. Like, I don't think like anyone would watch Ramayana and be like, oh my God, Sita just committed suicide. Even though, that's where she came from. She didn't want to live on Earth anymore. She was sad and she was depressed and she didn't want to be with her family anymore. She left behind her 2 sons and her husband.
So I was just trying to say that mental health was there from long time uh, since the human was there on this planet.
Yeah.
So, but because of cultures, because of different historical backgrounds, different human beings on different parts of the world raised believing, trusting, and following a certain way of lifestyle and thinking and believing and having different gods and believing them. So, but eventually, if we see everybody is human being, everybody have the body, hands, legs, and the face, everything. It's common everywhere. So I'm sure you might have also gave service to other country people also. So what is the difference in mental health in different human beings in different parts of the world?
So I think being here and dealing with the different cultures, like Asian population, Hispanic population, I've noticed that there are some cultures that have more family support. For example, I see a lot of support in the Mexican population, a lot of family support, and a lot of acceptance if somebody's going through mental health. The Asian population, once again, I see a lot of stigma with the Asian population where parents just, especially if it's a child, the parents just don't want to deal with it. They're ashamed of it. So it's all about, where I come in as a pharmacist, it's all about educating and letting them know that I am somebody who dealt with mental health and the stigma coming from the Indian background. So this is how we approach it, especially when I'm dealing with different patient populations.
So have you understood why that stigma is there?
Yeah, the biggest reason stigma is there is the education. It's the lack of education. That is the biggest, because we don't really educate people what's happening in the brain. There's a chemical imbalance happening in the brain, right? So when you talk about like how medications work, they work towards targeting the chemical imbalance. When we talk about, like, let's say diabetes, we're talking about like how we are lowering blood sugar, lowering hemoglobin A1C, the different parameters, but there's no stigma there. There's no stigma. Do you see that? If you're treating somebody with a diabetes medication, there's no stigma there. But if you're treating somebody with an antidepressant, there's a stigma there. There's a shame there. The person taking the diabetes medication is not shamed. They don't feel ashamed. They know that they have to be on that medication to help their diabetes. But when you talk about the patient who is taking an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication, they're ashamed. They feel ashamed. So the reason why is because there is no one really educating society about, yeah, there's this mental health, but what's happening inside the brain? You've got serotonin levels dropping, dopamine levels dropping, norepinephrine levels dropping. And those are your happy neurotransmitters. So this is how the drugs work. They increase. And once they increase your neurotransmitters, that's when you start to feel happy. But a lot of people don't understand that's how the drugs work.
So, so India has a huge. India is hugely populated country, 140 crore population. So, do you think it should be the mental health here should be treated in the same way where the population in other parts of the world is treated?
Yes. Yeah. Because I feel like the especially the women in India, they need to feel that they have worth and they have a reason to live and that they are valued. I feel like Indian women have it harder than Indian men. And a lot of that is due to just being a woman. And it's not easy. It's not easy. And I really, really hope that there are more platforms in India that allow women to talk about their mental health struggles, support services, therapy, whatever they need, and seek that support if they're not getting it from their own family, being able to seek support from any type of organization or free platform. Um, so that's something that I would really, really hope to see. And I would love to be part of if opportunities ever arise to help work in that area.
So, what Indians don't know that Western people know when it comes to mental health?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Uh, you're saying that there is lack of education. So, what do you think that Indians don't know about mental health that Western country people know about mental health?
You know, India is probably one of the smartest countries in the world, right? If you think about it, Indians are so intelligent. They're like leaders in everything from CEOs to doctors. Um, I think that there just has to be more open conversation. People just have to talk about it. India knows this stuff. India is so smart, you know. Probably one of the most of the thought leaders come from India. But I think it's being able to have open conversations like this for people to have open conversations in schools, right? Having like some of the things that they do here in American schools is having subjects in schools like elementary school, colleges, universities, having a mental health class and introducing the topic of mental health to children from primary school level. And having that foundation will allow kids to continue to have an understanding of what mental health is. I think it starts from childhood education, which is what they're doing here. And if they can do that in other countries, I think that as the generations start to build, as kids get older, it's not going to be as much of a stigma culturally based on whichever country you come from. So once again, it's education. And if we can have it as a core education, like math or English, have a mental health class and talk about emotions and what mental health is, I think that would really, really help.
So, what you observe in Indian humans about mental health?
So my observation with Indian humans, and this is not all Indians, it's just generally speaking, is Indians tend to have this reserve. They're reserved when it comes to talking about mental health. Like, they're not really ready to open up. People feel very uncomfortable when it comes to emotions and talking about, anxiety and grief. And so I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're just taught to just move through your emotions and just get over it and go through the next thing that you have to do. So, but I think that there's a lot of uh, improvement happening with mental health in India since the pandemic, because you see all these Indian Bollywood celebrities talking about mental health, right? You see it on all platforms. Um, so I think the pandemic has really opened the eye, um, especially talking culturally about India. So I think more people are going to start talking about it and continue to talk about it.
So humans are there, like I said, the humans are there in different parts of the world from long time. So, do you think a particular part of the world know better than other part of the world? Because the humans are there from long time and they are acquiring knowledge and they started uh, from very beginning. So,
Yeah,
how can one person know better than other person if everybody came at the same time?
yeah, that's a great question. That's a very good question. Yeah, that's, I can't speak for other people, but I think um, just being aware and having awareness and having that own inner growth as a person to understand what life is. Life is about loss and grief and love and happiness and understanding that you are here on earth for a limited amount of time and you have this purpose, whatever your purpose is, whatever your life plan is. But that's a very good question. I would say that it all has to do with just being aware and understanding what is mental health, educating yourself.
So, I'm sure in your experience you might have interacted with a lot of people having different types of problems or different types of experiences and coming with different types of uh, problems. So how you felt, how you treated them, and what this collection of observations of yours uh, uh, is is making you think.
There's a lot of I've observed that there's a lot of sadness in the world. There's a lot of sadness. There is a lot of competition. Um, a lot of it has to do with social media. I have observed that young women, young teenage girls, ages 12 to 17, are dealing with mental health issues. A lot of it has to do with self-appearance, how they look. They're comparing themselves to others. So I've just observed that because of technology is very powerful. Social media is very powerful, but it's also very toxic and it's also very dangerous. And I think that social media platforms do impact people's mental health. people's mental health. And I remember when I was growing up, we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, and it was a really good time. I mean, yes, we struggled a little bit here and there, but not to the extent that people are now. And a lot of it is just because you're constantly comparing yourself to all these images on social media, magazines, and it's just sad because it takes away from what important person you are and what your like strengths are, because you're constantly comparing yourself to other people and their achievements. And I just feel like as human beings, we just have to remember that being you is your own superpower.
Uh, like you said, there is so much competition and there is so much comparison. So is it possible for a human being to be himself all his life?
No, we live in such an advanced technology time. Everything is technology based. It is human to compare yourself, but then you have to just shift your mindset and remind yourself with whatever way you can that you are you and no one can be you, and that's your superpower. But I mean, I've compared myself to other people and what they're doing. I'm sure you have. I'm sure everyone has. And it's just part of being a human being. Um, Unless you're like a monk in a ashram, you know? Yeah, it's just it's inevitable. All human beings compare themselves.
So change is constant. So how any human can be adaptable to every situation that he's facing?
So I think very good question, and this is something that I continue to learn is the practice of mindfulness. If you practice mindfulness and you just take it one day at a time, whatever the situation is, you just remind yourself that right here, right now, this is the situation, but it doesn't mean it defines you. You will get through that difficult time. You will get through that storm that you're going through. And I have learned from my own personal experience that every single experience is part of your growth as a human being and part of you evolving to like your truer self.
So what are those qualities that will help any human being be mentally stable and be positive uh, most of his lifetime?
So, one of the biggest things that I do is breath work. I do pranayama. I do, like it's Kundalini yoga, which kind of just, if I'm starting to feel anxious, like if I'm starting to have thoughts, I just focus on my breath. I'll do 10 minutes of breathing exercises twice a day, and it shifts my mindset. Like if my mind is racing, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I sit in my meditation spot. Um, and then I just practice the practice of mindfulness. When you practice mindfulness, it allows you to enjoy the present moment. Yes, we all worry about the future. Yes, we all have a to-do list. But when you focus on whatever you're doing at this very moment, like taking a glass of water or going for a walk or making dinner with your family, you're enjoying that actual act of what you're doing right now. And that really helps with mental health. It really does, because it doesn't put you in this crazy spiral downhill mind. It allows you to just focus on the now, which I feel like most people need to live. Like we all like to plan things, and of course it's nice to plan, but when you really focus on mindfulness and just living in the moment, it really does take away a lot of your mental health stress.
Uh, in your long time experience, uh, understanding about mental health and understanding about physical body, so have you ever thought that why human body needs, why human feelings, emotions, thoughts needs a physical body? Why this connection?
Good question. What I've learned in my experience is thoughts are just thoughts. They're not your reality. But your body sometimes doesn't differentiate, like, is that thought real? And I think being able to be aware that all these thoughts, thousands of thoughts go through your head, every hour. But being aware, and this is where the practice of meditation comes in, aware that every single thought that comes through your mind is just a thought. So being able to differentiate that and having the mind-body connection is something that I'm still on a journey of practicing, and that's with my practice of meditation. And of course, a lot of people, when they're thinking about thoughts, your body and your brain don't realize, is that real or is that not real? Like, I'm having these thoughts. And that's where the anxiety creeps up, and that's where the sadness creeps up, and the depression, and whatever other emotions, the anger. So I think that's being aware that these are just thoughts that are going through your head.
So every human who are living in 180 plus countries have the same sensors, 5 sensors. So, but the information that they are collecting through those sensors are different, and why they want to collect different information, and what is the reason, what is the purpose?
Good question. I think a lot of it also has to do with stress level. Like, we live a very stressful life here in America. Everything is very, very, very stressful. I think from my personal experience of coming and visiting India, that India is very fast, but it's also very relaxing. A lot of people, you know, they spend a lot of time with family. They find ways to relax. They meditate. They get breaks from work. So I think the key thing is how do you handle stress? How does an individual handle stress? And I remember having this conversation with my mom. I was like, oh my God, in India, people can get to go home for lunch, take a nap, and then go back to work, and even kids, like some days they don't start school here. There's no such thing. I'm lucky if I get 30-minute lunch break from my 9-hour work day. So I think a lot of it is how do you handle stress and how do you manage stress?
Why different bodies reacts to different things in different way?
Good question. You have to look at the body as a whole. Like, does the person have other underlying health conditions? What other stressful impacts do they have in their life, right? I mean, when you think about stress, you think about emotional stress, financial stress, and it's just some people go to like people go to alcohol or drugs and they put toxic things in their body, opposed to what are some healthy ways to deal with stress, right? Like, here people smoke, they take drugs, they have alcohol, but the right things to do, which, this is Eastern medicine, is breath work and meditation and leaning into spirituality, like spending more time spiritually, reading books, going in nature. So I think a lot of the times bodies handle stress differently based on what tools you use to do stress management.
So how can a human of a particular part of the world can able to maintain his mental health in other part of the planet?
So like you're asking, like, if I were to go to India, like, how would I handle my mental health? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, how they can able to adopt and
Yeah. So if I were to, let's say, move to India and do my work in India, I would adapt by, spending more time uh, doing more spiritual work, visiting temples, spending more time doing yoga, maybe doing a yoga in an ashram, doing more volunteer work, things that I want to do, right? So that's how I would personally adapt if I were to move to India. So I would adapt a little bit to the environment.
So how it is possible for human to shift himself physically from one part to other part and maintain that mental health? Do you think they are doing perfectly?
I think you can do it because it all starts from you, right? Like you have to work on your inner self. When you work on your inner self and use the tools that help you, I think you could take yourself and go anywhere in the world because you're working on you. And so you have those inner tools to help you with your stress management. Then you can go anywhere in the world that you want to.
Uh, is it too bad to be too curious?
No, no, I don't think it's bad at all to be curious. I think that's part of like wondering like why is this happening in this country but not happening in this country, because it makes you just understand, and that's the beauty of humanity, learning from one another. Like I can learn from you, you can learn from me. We're both of Indian background. I live in America, you live in India, and I'm curious to find out how mental health is treated in India. So I think it's curiosity is it's good.
So how communication skill helps or affects or impacts mental health?
I think communication is key, right? I think if somebody is struggling, like just saying, hey, I'm having a very hard time right now, I need to talk about it. Like being able to communicate with a family member or a friend or a therapist, or a teacher or whoever you can go to. That's how you can get it out of your chest. Like you need to talk about it. Talk, be vulnerable, share your story, your struggles, and just remind yourself that talking about it is bravery. You shouldn't be ashamed of it. And that's how we can communicate as humans.
Do you think the moral values are making human to suppress his emotions or feelings and thoughts? That's why the reason they're not able to come out from their, that's why they're unable to express or put themselves out.
Yeah. I think, especially as Indian women, like uh, my mom's generation, my grandmother's generation, you're not really supposed to cry. You're not really supposed to share your emotions. And if you cry, you need to wipe your tears very quickly. So when you go back to, like my grandmother's generation, you have to just keep going, regardless of how you never shared your emotions. And even my mom too. It's not probably until like in my family, my generation, where I can openly talk about it, talk about my sadness and my feelings and my grief journey. And I'm excited because generations to come, like my children's ages, I have two daughters who are teenagers, you know, and having open conversations with my kids about it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel, um, you know, angry, and having that level of communication will allow people today and onwards to just not feel alone. I think that's the thing with mental health is when you are suppressed and you're not allowed to talk about it, you feel alone. And that's where people decide to take their life or they hurt themselves. It's because of that deep loneliness feeling.
So you're saying to Indian women that they have to talk about everything in the world openly and publicly.
Whatever, honestly, whatever is comfortable for them. And there, of course, there are going to be women who don't want to talk about anything, and that's fine too. I think, and this also goes for men too, right? Like men should also be allowed to talk about their feelings. This is not just for women. Men also deal with mental health just as much. Men should be allowed to show emotions. Men should be allowed to cry. Men should be allowed to feel sadness. Because why? Why should we? For me, I focus on women because I'm a woman, but my general um, uh, talk is to both genders, men and women. And if you really think about it, like, not too many men show emotion. You don't see too many men crying. And a lot of it is also, as a man, you don't cry, kind of thing. So that's something that needs to be worked on, because you should be able to cry. Crying is a way of releasing emotions. That's part of being human. So that's a separate conversation.
So humans are same before 20 years of your experience and after 20 years of your experience. But technology have changed. So how this technology is influencing and affecting and uh, uh, impacting the human mind or human mental health, that you
Yeah.
know what happened before and you are observing what is happening now with this technology.
Yeah. Very, very good question. Technology is a huge factor when it comes to mental health. If you think about it, social media, constantly looking at your phone, your brain is being thrown thousands and thousands of images throughout the day. And just so much your mind can handle. Oh, this person is doing this person has this person looks like this. And you're not even thinking about yourself. You're just focusing on all these things. Like when I was growing up, there was no social media. I wasn't really comparing myself to other people. I wasn't feeling sad because, oh, she got to take this trip, but I'm not taking this trip. Today, because of social media, everyone is comparing themselves in every aspect of their life: career, financial status, how they look, where they're traveling. So it's just it's too much at times. So I try to tell patients and my children and myself, take time away from technology. You need a break from technology at times. Be out in nature, read a book, uh, you know, go to the ocean. So you gotta take technology breaks. It's too much at times. It's so fast, and I think it's just going to be even more as time continues to progress, because tech, social media is something where everyone uses it. It's a great way to connect, but like I said, it can be very, very, very hard for people who are on it all the time. Yeah,
You are an expert of understanding mental health of human. So there will be a lot of technologists who will be watching and listening to our conversation from anywhere on this planet, who are working on technical products, technical services, that they are building technical things like softwares or whatever. So what you suggest them, what they have to create and how that should be, and which will make human to maintain their mental health and be positive.
that's a great question. So I know that Instagram, just to give you an example, like you can put a timer on Instagram. So I have a 2 hour timer on Instagram, and after being on Instagram for 2 hours, the app will tell me, "Oh, close the app. You've been on it for 2 hours." So I think technology wise, having like emotions, like for example, if there is an app that says, or a platform that says, are you starting to feel a dip in your mental health? Are you feeling sad, angry, agitated? Click on this. I think that will allow people to be aware of, huh, I'm starting to feel a bit of anxiety right now. I'm starting to feel a bit of sadness right now. I'm starting to feel a bit of these emotions. And then they can kind of like understand, what's causing these emotions? Is it because I've been on social media for 2 hours? Like, why do I feel sad all of a sudden? Because I was fine 2 hours ago. So it gives the awareness. Turn off your phone.
So I'm going to take more 5 minutes of your.
Say that again.
I'm going to take more 5 minutes of yours with your permission.
Okay, five more minutes and then I have to go.
Yeah, definitely. So my next question is, human is creating artificial intelligence, AI, which will make human to reduce the mental and physical effort, and that will do the work of human being. So what suggestions or what ideas or what thoughts that you are going to give to those experts, because you already studied human beings and their mental health a lot. So what are those important values or thoughts or emotions or whatever that should be kept in artificial intelligence machine that will make human life better?
So I actually had this conversation, great question, with a psychiatrist who is in New York. And we talked about having technology and social media days off. So like say, for example, kids go to school from 9 to 5. Well, they should have social media or technology from 9 to 5 and then shut everything off, where then people can then connect with different things besides social media. So doing things that uplift your mood, like being in nature, reading a good book, spending time with family. And I think that today's generation is all about the phone. It's constant. If you look at every single teenager, young adult, even older adults, they're glued to their phone. And I remember last year I did a 3-day, no phone, 3 days, no phone, no social media, detox. And I have to tell you, it felt so good. Like my mind felt calm. I felt like I had just finished a meditation retreat. I came back from a vacation. And I realized at that time that a lot of my feelings and my mental health and my comparison was coming from observing what other people were doing. So I think, to answer your question, people just need to have a cutoff time for when they are on their technology devices. And it just reminds me, think about all the things that, like, when my mom and dad were growing up, they used to play in the backyard and play with stones and fly kites and all these fun things. Like now, kids are just on social media constantly. And I'm like, you're not being a kid. Like, you gotta enjoy the little things. And so I think having but that would be really hard for a lot of people who are so addicted to social media to have social media time off. So finding the right balance is the key, actually.
So mental health is only for social animals or also for wild and domestic animals?
I don't see dogs depressed. I don't see animals. If you think about it, animals are very mindful. They live the most mindful life. In fact, when people have pets, here in America, a lot of people have pet dogs. And a lot of people say that having an animal is very therapeutic because it helps you just focus on mindfulness. I think animals and humans are very different. I think I would love to live like an animal where I just don't care about anything else but what I'm eating or what I'm playing with. Yeah.
How societal rules are affecting human mental health?
Societal rules, it all comes back to stigma. So a lot of it is, do you have the right resources in the country that you live? When you go to your doctor's office, can you openly talk about mental health? Will your doctor then refer you to a mental health specialist? So it honestly comes back to society and stigma and educating and being able to openly talk. And just to remind yourself that there's so many people out there that are struggling. It's just not only you. And I think that's the most important thing. People feel very alone and lonely, and they shouldn't.
I'll put your web links on the screen as well as in the description of this video. People who find our video on YouTube can see the work that you're doing, and uh, they can take your help for their betterment of their life, and for their profession or for their personal life as well.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yes.
Can you spell your social media to or your contact details to my podcast listeners?
Yeah. My Instagram handle is Dr. Monica Farm D. So that's DrMonicapharmD.
So, final observation of yours as a mental health advocate. What do you say about my mental health and my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I have. I love the work that you're doing. You have this great ability. You asked me some of the most amazing questions today in your interview. So you have done amazing work. I see that you've interviewed uh, hundreds of thought leaders, professionals, experts in their own fields. So when you reached out to me to do an interview, I was like, yes, I'm excited. So keep going. And I definitely want to do another interview with you in the future.
It's a great thing for me. And how this talking with experts like you who are already in the world, who have a huge experience interacting with so many individuals in their lives, talking with them and collecting this information and showing to my audience, and how this is going to helpful for me and for my mental health in coming days.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I have been, during my meditation, I've been manifesting doing a talk in India. So you are my very first talk in India. So I can't wait. So please definitely share my talk with your other uh, contacts in India, because I definitely want to be able to do more conversations like this with more inspiring people like you in India. So let me know.
Keep giving service, and make the world more positive with your contribution, and also help a lot of living beings.
Yes. Thank you again. I'm so excited. When will this be launched?
Uh, 1 or 2 days.
Oh, wow. You're so fast. Okay. Excited. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Sai. And let's maybe in 6 months do another talk about mental health and any other topics you want to talk about.
Definitely. Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yes.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yes.
Thank you, Monica. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.